Welcome to Buzzed and Baffled, the podcast where the wine is flowing and the stories are strange.
Each week, we uncork a bottle, take a sip, and dive into some of the most jaw-dropping, unbelievable true tales you've never heard before.
From historical mysteries to bizarre real-life events, we'll have you wondering, is this for real?
So, grab your glass, sit back, and join us as we get buzzed and you get baffled.
Hey listeners, just a quick note before we dive in. Buzzed and Baffled is a podcast where we enjoy a glass of wine, share wild stories, and sometimes get a little, buzzed.
While we strive to share true and accurate tales, we're here for the entertainment as much as the facts. So take everything we say with a grain of salt and a splash of wine. Any opinions shared here are our own and do not reflect those of any other party.
Always drink responsibly and remember, the truth can be stranger than fiction.
So we are back.
We are back.
For us, it's been a mere hours.
Yeah, like an hour and 20 minutes.
We cooked a delicious, traditional Florida udon.
Yeah, a lot has transpired in the last 80 minutes.
Kyla's giving me a thumbs up because she thinks I'm awesome.
It's not because I think you're doing a good job, it's because I sliced the hell out of my thumb on the mandolin when I was doing cabbage for the udon.
And what did you say right before you did that?
I was probably telling you about how one time I sliced my other finger on the mandolin doing cabbage.
You were telling me how proud you were that you hadn't sliced yourself in the mandolin and you're almost done.
Yeah, I had about 2 slices left and I caught myself and there's a chunk. So a nice purple Band-Aid on, it's throbbing. We're in real good shape right now.
I have 0 cuts or burns on me and I am doing great.
Well, in a little while this won't hurt anymore, so.
A little wine, it'll be fine. Yeah. It'll sanitize.
I think that also might be why it took so long to stop bleeding. I had to put, we have styptic, gel for the dog's nails.
Once you took that out, I was like, oh my god, I hope she does not use that.
And in a pinch I would have, but I also knew I had an old styptic pen that I bought before the gel, and I knew I could scrape some of that off and use it, which I did.
How did that go?
I've never used it before. That stings.
Yeah, it does.
But it worked, so yeah, I'm not doing great right now.
So she's waiting, everyone, for this to stop oozing, and then she's gonna super glue it shut.
Yeah, I'll put some liquid bandage on there, and then because the angle it's at is not really conducive to Band-Aid situation, so this is gonna have to be a liquid Band-Aid.
She also wouldn't take help putting the Band-Aid on.
I mean, you couldn't have done any better than this. It can only go one way.
I feel like
the pad of the Band-Aid can only go on one way. If you're putting the sticky part on, then you can do, but that might hurt a little more.
Well, you need a fabric Band-Aid for that. You have a plasticky type Band-Aid.
Yeah, because this is just interim. Yeah. This is interim medical care. And it's on my right hand, which makes it a little bit worse because I'm right-handed, and I went to unlock my phone with my thumbprint, and
it's a shit a laugh if you now have a scar and it never works again.
No, but it'll be up here. But I had to quickly add my index fingers so I could get into my phone. Alright, let's do...
Wait. We are on episode 17 now.
Yes.
So this is part 2 of the Bobby Joe Long story. And so, the first part was quite a ride. The second part of The Weekend Killer I have entitled Catch Me If You Can't.
Okay.
Because the police are doing a bang-up job.
Yeah, they're just realizing that, maybe there's a common thread between these several deaths in a very short window.
Yeah, there are 8 victims in, but they're only connecting 4. But for sure, maybe 3.
Okay. So our wine for this episode is called Dashwood Sauvignon Blanc. It's a Marlborough 2023 New Zealand. The label is very elegant.
Unlike Florida.
Yeah, this is also another Choose Your Own Adventure wine night because there's no wine in Florida. So this is described as, Dashwood embraces the natural beauty of the coastlines and unique flora and fauna that are synonymous with New Zealand. I know John Buzz will laugh at that because that's from Sleeping Beauty.
Is it the terrier?
It is the terrier. Taking inspiration from the native pohutakawa that flowers in the summertime along New Zealand's coastlines are wines embody the care and respect we have for our precious environment. Our Sauvignon Blanc promises stone fruit, citrus, and tropical flavors. Trying to do this without a thumb. ASMR.
She's doing great, guys. Clap for her.
It's very pale.
It is.
Yeah, that is really good, though.
Ooh, it's sharp. It's very different than it smells any other Sauvignon Blanc I've had.
It smells a little bit, it's not piney, but you can definitely say citrus. Yeah.
Citrus forward.
Ooh, I like this very much.
I wanted to try it without a little bit of jalapeno in it before I dropped that in to see what it did.
This is very flavorful.
Ooh, like it makes me salivate a little bit in the front.
And it's not carbonated, of course, but there's a little bit, you can feel just like the tiniest little bit on your tongue. Very good.
I'm trying to think, like, I wouldn't do this with like a fish.
I would do this with like a shrimp Alfredo.
Well, I can't do that.
Zero problem.
A regular Alfredo I could do it with.
It's very good. Nice. Way to go, Dashwood.
Yep.
Alright, let's jump back into Baba Joe.
Baba Joe Long. We ended with the 8th victim, Victoria Johnson, the very sad woman from Connecticut.
Yeah, she looks so sad.
She disappeared, like many others, from Nebraska Avenue. She had a history of drug and alcohol use, and she was often at the Sly Fox Lounge, where a lot of his other victims were. She was not reported missing until after his arrest, so she was not connected enough in the community that people even noticed when she was gone. At this point, we are on November 3rd, 1984. He kidnapped Virginia, they believe, at the end of October 1984. So he's gone a month, but we don't know when he dumped Virginia.
Yeah.
On November 3rd, 1984, Long kidnapped his next victim, a 17-year-old girl named Lisa McVeigh. And that is her, right there.
Okay.
She was 17. He stole her off her bike as she rode home from work.
Oh, Jesus.
She was riding home with the intention of committing suicide.
Oh.
So we're already off to a dark start.
No.
I found like the worst story I could ever find.
My gosh.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Ooh.
Long blindfolded Lisa, and this is where we start to find out what he did with his other victims. He took her to his home. Lisa was smart. She kept her wits about her, and she very intentionally left as many fingerprints on the inside of Long's home as she could.
Yes.
Thinking that this would help the police in the event of her murder or any other kind of investigation.
Yeah, and like hopefully none of us or none of you are ever in that situation, but if you are in a situation where you are being held, touch everything you can. Leave hair, fight as hard as
Get
you
as
can.
many skin cells under your nails as humanly possible.
Yeah, do whatever it takes, because
bite him and swallow some of his flesh.
At
like
worst,
happen.
Even if, heaven forbid, you are killed or we are, whatever it is, at least there will be a clue.
Forensic evidence.
Yeah.
They didn't have some of that forensic evidence then, but she's like, you know what we got? Fingerprints.
Yep.
So she was held for 26 hours, and she survived Long's assault on her, so we know more about her history and the events that happened than any of his other victims. So she lives.
Is that photo looks like a news, I can see like the Fox 13, like that's post. Damn it, sorry. How does it feel, Nicole?
So, but Lisa, she was born on March 1967 in Tampa, Florida. She does not have a great history. She experienced physical and sexual abuse as a child when she was sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend. She recounted that he would put a gun to her head when he molested her over a 3-year period. She was in and out of foster care, and at the age of 14, her mother forced her to move in to be her grandmother's caretaker. She was riding home to her grandmother's house on the evening of November 3rd after work. She recounts being blindfolded and being brought to Long's home. While there, she worked to commit details of her abduction to memory and covered the bathroom with her fingerprints so the police could tie her to the scene upon the event of her death.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like a smart cookie to be like, I'm in this crisis situation and I'm thinking 4 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, knowing, assuming the worst is going to happen, at least it's the only thing you can do because you have no other control.
This is the only thing within my control is I'm going to fuck you up in the event that you kill me.
Yep.
Up to this point, Long had held several women captive in his home before killing them. While she was Long's captive, she worked to form a bond with him, offering to be his secret girlfriend, and attempted to elicit sympathy from him by claiming that she was the only child of a father whom she needed to care for, which wasn't true. Right. She's just trying to get him to buy into
Yeah, she's trying to humanize herself.
My guess is that she saw that he was a father. There may or may not have been pictures of his children in the house, and she's like, this might be the chord I need to strum. In the end, she persuaded Long to blindfold her and release her in a remote location. She followed his instructions and waited 5 minutes before she removed the blindfold to give him time to escape. The police were not immediately contacted. Why do you think that is? I'm curious about how you propose that the police were not immediately contacted.
She did not immediately contact the police because...
Like, how dark are we going here?
I'm thinking, did she have charges? Or was she planning to kill herself again?
It's so much worse.
Oh, no. Was her molester a police officer? Oh, okay.
The police were not immediately contacted. It was when she got home, her mother's boyfriend interrogated her regarding her whereabouts while she was captive and beat her.
Oh. You were gone. We didn't know where you were, and he beat the hell out of you.
It was only after 5 hours of being assaulted by the boyfriend, when her story remained the same, did her mother contact the police.
Jesus Christ.
How do you think it went when she got to the police?
Not awesome.
You would be correct. At first, Lisa was met with skepticism.
Of course she was.
So we know we have 4 victims, and someone is stating that they've been kidnapped and assaulted. But we're not going to be like, wait a minute, this might be the link we're waiting for.
Believe the victims, people.
Once she was able to convince the police that her story was true, that's when her efforts while being Long's captive started to pay off.
And I mentioned it in the last episode, that's just like Steven Stainer. When he showed up with the other boy who was kidnapped, they did not believe that's who they were. Come on, why would they lie about that? They're teenagers and a little kid.
Well, and it's not uncommon that the victim gets blamed for doing a false statement. Where if they did, you deal with that after the fact.
Yep.
You definitely don't assume they're lying.
Yeah, you don't assume from the start that it's false.
Because that's how you end up with 8 dead women in a year period in Tampa, Florida. So she was able to give a description of Long, his vehicle, and the route taken to the home. With this information, they were able to track Long down and they began to surveil him.
Okay.
One officer in particular really paid attention. and I'm not shitting you when I say this name, Sergeant Larry Pinkerton.
Nice. It's in his blood.
He specialized in sex crimes. Officer Pinkerton believed Lisa's story and recognized the connection between her story and the ongoing investigation into the serial killer. So only one cop of the whole team.
Yeah. Way to go, Officer Pinkerton. And, I mean, she's like, go there, dust the bathroom, my fucking fingerprints will be there. And, like, I know you don't want to, like, spring that, but...
Well, and they can't just, like, walk in.
Right.
Like, because he's not, I mean, you don't want to tip him off.
Exactly.
Because then he's going to, like, clean the whole goddamn house.
But yeah, but she's like, once you get in there, you're going to find this, this, and this. And, like, if she can describe in detail all these things about him, why wouldn't you believe her? Oh, because she's a woman, that's right.
She's 17, and it's 1984. But also think about it. She was held for, was it 26 hours? Other people were held for longer. Their DNA and their fingerprints are going to be in that house.
Yep. But no one knows to look there until her.
Yep. Where am I here? So Pinkerton was able to use the information that Lisa provided to identify Lon. Oh no. So they're on to him. Do you think that we're done?
Well, you have more pages in your hand, so no. And I see there's more dots on this timeline.
Nope. So where are we in the timeline here?
We are, so, we're between Lisa McVeigh and Virginia Johnson, because they're both right around the same-ish point, right in the middle of the timeline on this page.
Yes.
Sorry about our paper rustling.
There's a lot going on.
ASMR.
Yeah, because we don't know exactly when Virginia Johnson disappeared.
Right. We know when she was found, but not exactly. So that's, those two are kind of like muddy in between.
But she was held for 26 hours, so she was released on November 4th, or like maybe November 5th, depending on the time. But then we have a 9th murder victim. So he's released Lisa McVeigh, and now we have Kim Swan. So if we look here, she is the last one. So Kim Swan was 21. She was someone who struggled, and she was often seen around Tampa bars from the age of 15.
Oh, gosh.
So she didn't have anyone looking out for her. She was the mother of a 1-year-old son, and she worked as a dancer. Where do you think she worked as a dancer?
Well, the Sly Fox or the Starlight.
Yep, she worked at the Sly Fox Lounge. At the time of her death, she had recently enrolled at technical school to become a medical technician. She was last seen on November 11th, and the last one had been released on... Where's my page?
Lisa was released on like the 4th or 5th.
So we're like a week out.
Yeah.
At the Bamboo Lounge. She was found strangled in a field the next day. The police found evidence including fecal matter and red carpet fibers. This is the 3rd time they found red carpet fibers. Right around this time, there were also 3 additional murders that were not claimed by Long that may have occurred between the time that Lisa was released and the time that Long was arrested. In addition to Swan, there were 3 more women that were found murdered in Tampa. On November 6th, the body of Virginia Lee Johnson was found 2 miles north of Hillsborough. On November 11th, a dancer from the Sky Fox Lounge disappears, and her body is discovered on the 12th, bound and strangled on an overpass. And on the 22nd of November, the body of Artis Wick was found raped and strangled.
Oh, she's the first one here on our list. Okay. This is not a great look.
No. So meanwhile, the police are like, survey, we're watching. But apparently not well enough.
Yeah.
Because 4 more women may have been murdered.
Yeah, in that, yeah. Oh, jeez. And, like, okay, so the police are surveilling him. Either he's very elusive and is able to shake his the tail, so to speak, to get rid of them, or the timeline here is a little muddy because they don't know exactly when these women were taken. I mean, he could have did 3 women in one day.
I mean, he could have.
I mean, the way he was escalating, where his time is shorter and shorter and shorter in between.
And this is just my theory, is that I'm sure he is somewhat aware that, like, they're closing.
Yeah, he's got to, once he let Lisa McVeigh go, he's got to know that she's going to,
She's gonna say something.
He's like, I gotta get it while I can.
Yeah.
And he just goes on a spree.
And also, this is a compulsive behavior. This isn't like a well planned out. This is a snatch and grab on convenience.
Yeah, and he's hanging out in an area where troubled women are known to be, people who maybe will not be missed right away.
There's a lot of opportunity, and a lot of serial killers target homeless people and sex workers because no one's going to report them missing.
Yep.
So we've made it to November 14th, which I think I probably have on here. Yep. So the police announce a task force to catch the man that they believe responsible for the recent murders around Tampa. So this is like a news release. Like, hey, we've recognized there's a serial killer and we are working to apprehend him. Long is pulled over for a license check on November 15th, 1984, due to his car matching the description that Lisa gave the police, under the pretense of a robbery that had occurred locally. So they were trying to gather enough information to get just cause. He was let go, but placed under continuous surveillance.
Yeah, at this point, they know it's him. They're just waiting for the right opportunity because they don't want to just spring it on him and give him a chance to destroy evidence and that sort of thing.
You have to make sure everything's in line to make sure your case is ironclad.
Yeah.
On November 16th, 1984, 2 FBI agents who specialized in fiber matching were able to obtain an arrest warrant based on the fibers that would be in the car he drove. I believe I put a picture on, it's going to be on the website because I found a picture of the same kind of car and the evidence from the 3 sites,
the red fibers.
The red fibers.
Kind of the continuous, and this isn't a pun, but like the thread between the 3 of them.
Yeah. So Long was arrested on November 16th, 1984 for the kidnapping and sexual assault of Lisa McVeigh outside a movie theater. At the time of his arrest, 3 Florida jurisdictions were looking for him in relation to the crimes he had committed based on the forensic evidence they had collected, including clothing, carpet fibers, semen, ligature marks, and rope knots.
Jesus Christ.
The police had fiber evidence that tied the victims to Long's car, and the information provided by Lisa McVeigh that tied him to her kidnapping and sexual assault. So it's like a good thing you actually believed her.
Yeah. And you didn't dismiss her for being a troubled teen who just made shit up. Like, nobody would make that up.
If someone came into my office and was like, I was kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and almost murdered, I'd be like, oh, yeah, we need to do something about this.
And if someone does make it up, you'll see through it right away.
It's something you catch on the back end. Yeah. You don't weed it out in the front.
You assume from the start they are telling the truth, and you prove otherwise, not the other way around.
You follow the evidence. You don't make the evidence fit your narrative.
And that's, when I was doing death investigation, the first thing we learned was going to any scene, assume it's a homicide.
Until proven otherwise.
And then you check things off. If I got called and they said, an elderly man passed away overnight, his elderly wife found him in the morning, I have to go in assuming she killed him until I see that that's not the case. Like, you always assume the highest level and then you carve out.
Because if you see him and his eyes are all bloodshot and it appears that maybe he's been strangled, he may have died in his sleep, but it wasn't of natural causes.
Yeah, and there's things you look for, there's telltale signs, and it's not the case 99.999% of the time, but you don't want to miss it that one time that it is.
Would you like to try this?
Sure.
A little jalapeno?
And you don't want to miss it just because you were biased, thinking it wouldn't be.
Well, I think internal bias is kind of what trips us up most of the time, because we go in expecting something to happen, or we know the answers, and we miss some very obvious clues.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to do, like getting called, Mr. Johnson or whoever, he was on hospice, but the hospice nurse hasn't been there in a couple days, and, his wife said he passed overnight. Well, I'm going there, I'm like, well, this is going to be cut and dry.
Granny killed him!
But you have to walk in and just look at everything, and then whittle it down from there. It's going from kind of wide net to a narrow funnel instead of the other way around.
And, I would imagine that, he died in his sleep is a little different than, my husband fell down the stairs.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, well, that's a little murkier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is using a walker, but...
Yeah, so you always have to assume something is the truth first. Mm-hmm. And then as you prove it otherwise, you can eliminate those things.
Follow the evidence. Yep. At the time of his arrest, I just got a little bit of pepper in my mouth. I licked my finger, and I'm regretting my life choices.
That jalapeno, the hottest of all peppers.
I have baby mouth. Leave me alone. At the time of his arrest, he waived his Miranda rights
because he knew he was caught.
And he confessed to the unsolved series of murders and rapes in Tampa. However, when they presented him with the evidence of the case, he asked for an attorney, but no attorney was provided.
Oh.
So the Tampa police managed to fuck her up again.
Oh, see, you can't do that. Mm-mm. I mean, you have this guy dead to rights, and then you fuck it up by not giving him an attorney.
Mm-hmm. He eventually confessed to 9 of the murders. However, due to not having been provided with an attorney when he requested one, he did reach a plea deal and pled guilty to 8 murders in the abduction and rape of Lisa McVeigh on September 24th, 1985. He received 26 life sentences without the possibility of parole, and 7 life sentences with the possibility of parole after 25 years. This guy's not getting out of jail.
No. How does that... So, okay, does one trump the other? If you have X...
It depends if they're concurrent...
Right.
Or what's the other term?
Consecutive. So if they're consecutive and you're serving your non-parole ones first, then it's not a factor. But if they're concurrent, how do you decide which one gets parole and which one doesn't?
Well, I think maybe you're eligible for parole, and I'm just guessing. Yeah. We need Lauren or Brittany.
Yeah, this is that because I've never heard that before, where they've gotten a sentence of some no parole and some with possibility. So I don't know how they...
I would say even if you were eligible for parole, that's null and void because you're still serving the other sentence.
Right, yes, that's interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. Yeah, we need Lauren or Brittany or any of our other astute listeners who have a background in law. Let us know about this.
Someone, when we post that this episode's out, go into the comments and tell us if they know. He was later charged with the death of Michelle Sims, and he was found guilty and sentenced with the death penalty. Which one was Michelle Sims?
She's the third one in.
Okay. So I'm assuming that they found a way to work around...
Mm-hmm. So of these 10 women, we have Lisa McVeigh here who lived.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves 9.
Oh, and don't forget, we have the woman he raped when he went to her house, the woman he carjacked, the roommate, and the woman whose furniture he...
Yeah, so there's actually 14 victims, and the young girl he sent photos to, so 15 victims.
And his wife.
16. And who knows how long anymore. Yeah. I'm trying to do the math here. So we have Lisa McVeigh. She's on. So what I'm doing here is I have a grid of 10 photos.
Yeah.
We have Lisa McVeigh. So that leaves 9 murders. Yep. He confessed to 8 of them. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that's the other 8 besides Michelle Sims, which they later charged him with.
And there's the 3 that are unclaimed but are the same MO.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, regardless, killing one person is just as bad as killing 10.
So there continue to be appeals and court battles, because there always are, until April 23rd, 2019.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't believe I'm about to say this next sentence, because it hurts my heart a little bit to say that Governor Ron DeSantis did something good.
Oh, okay. I mean, I thought you were going to say, like, he let him out.
No. And do you know, Kyla, the guy who bought the house down the street? No. Ron DeSantis, for once in his tiny, shoed, healed life, did something good, and he signed Long's death warrant.
Okay.
And he was executed via lethal injection on May 23rd, 2019.
Yeah, I thought you were definitely going to say, when you said Ron DeSantis, I thought this was definitely going to go like, oh, he had a full pardon, now he's a congressman.
I mean, now? I'd be like, sure, why not?
Yeah,
I mean, this all tracks.
This is the the world we live in, that I honestly wouldn't have been surprised. Interesting.
So both Linda Nuttall, the woman whose house he assaulted her in front of her children,
Yep.
and Lisa McVeigh were present at his execution.
Okay.
Today, Lisa is a police officer and a school resource officer, and she's also a motivational speaker in Tampa, Florida.
Good for her.
She's currently working to become a detective.
Nice.
I bet you she won't disavow a 17-year-old girl who comes in.
Well, yeah, and she kind of has that detective's brain where she left all that evidence just in case.
So as I was doing this, my brain was going a mile a minute. I was, this may surprise you, hyper-focused.
No.
That's why we have flowcharts and timelines.
2 timelines, a map, photos.
I didn't get too over-invested in this.
So we have another photo up there. That's, I'm assuming, like right before his death.
Yeah, that is while he's in Florida getting ready to be executed.
Okay. Yeah, because it's, I mean, you can kind of tell it's the same guy as the other government photo, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it was someone else.
So as I researched this, I questioned, why did it take so long for the police to connect the victims and realize there was a serial killer operating and picking 9 women up off of Nebraska Avenue? I mean, it looks like a long street, but I'm like, it's 4 blocks.
Yeah, even if it's a long street, I mean, when you look at this map, it's like, they're numbered, and it's like 1, 2, 4, 5. Yeah, they're all in a straight line, and then you have a few outliers, but they're like a block away. Like, this is all within this very tight radius.
So many people called Long the classified ads killer, but he only assaulted 2 people under classified ads, and he did not murder them.
Right, yeah, it was the lady who was selling her house, and the furniture lady.
But I noticed that there were several other factors in play that could have been used to catch him. So this is where I get judgy.
Well, I mean, I want to hear it, of course.
So we remember that this was 1984, so they did not have access to gathering and assessing evidence as we do now.
Yeah, so we'll give them that.
Like, we talked about this in the Joylyn Watts case, like everything's in its infancy. One of the key pieces of evidence was the tiny red fibers found on the victims from his car. Another factor was that there were some racial differences between the victims. However, they were all young women of a lower socioeconomic status who were abducted from the same area.
Yeah, and I mentioned that where it's like, oh, you have 2 who are non-white. One is of Filipino descent, one's an African American. But even then, if you see, someone who's a sex worker or an exotic dancer or someone who's maybe not in the highest rungs of society with the same ligature marks or whatever it is, don't tunnel yourself so narrowly that you can't see what's going on.
Well, and I also think, when you find someone whose legs are broken off at the hips,
Jesus Christ, I forgot about that.
or the hyoid bone, or they have scissors, and then like, this is a violent act. This is above a John going too far during something, or someone ODing.
Yeah.
This is outside the norm
This is
of everyday
This is
crime.
absolute hatred of women. And I'm going to say,
Mother.
exactly, and you might have to hit the horn here, but I'm going to say, growing up with his very overbearing and inappropriate relationship with his mother, as well as his own struggles with femininity and his medical condition. He had to have a breast reduction. People probably tease him, call him a girl. That's a hard thing to.
There's a lot of things going on here. This is like beyond like what we'd see from like Norman Bates.
Yeah, this is many layers of.
It's a unique pathology.
It is, yeah. He's got a lot going on, and the way we see something shitty happens, the killing. Something shitty happens, the killing.
So most of them had substance abuse and a history of prostitution or worked as dancers. One thing I noticed is that outside of Kimberly Hobbs, all the victims were taken and found either on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Okay.
This may surprise you, but I entered the dates into a calendar to see what days of the week this was, and I did all of it, and I looked. This is not something the police at the time figured out. He was doing this when he wasn't working.
He was off of work. Because he has time to do it.
And that's why I labeled this the weekend killer.
Oh, you came up with that?
I came up with
that. Oh my gosh, I thought that's like what they actually called him. No! I was shocked.
No, because he would pick them up on a Friday, and most of them were dumped by Sunday.
Yeah.
So he would hold them over the weekend, or longer, we don't know for some of them, and then he would just go back to fucking work.
Jesus. Yeah, that's you with, strings and... No, but, that's not a hard conclusion to come to, police. It's just like when you put, killings on a map, you see a pattern. Mark them on the calendar, you'll see a pattern.
It's almost like the police should hire me. Maybe the FBI should call me so my beautiful mind can put all this together with my tisms.
Yeah. And I'll be there with my sliding code breaker.
And I'll be like, we just leave her alone and let her play with that. I will do the heavy lifting. So where am I? Yeah, so I checked the dates, because I'm detail-oriented, because I'm like, okay, so, was he just, willy-nilly grabbing these people? No, except for one. That was the pattern. And if they'd looked, they would have seen it.
Yeah, and that would have allowed them to they could have gone to, was it Kansas Street? Nebraska Street? They could have gone to Nebraska Street on a Friday and surveilled it and probably prevented some of these
Look for cars that have red fibers. We can figure out which cars have red fibers based on the interiors.
Yeah.
We can narrow this shit down.
See, they just gotta ask us.
The only reason we don't know that Hobbs doesn't fit in this criterion is because we don't know when she was found, and we don't know when she was disposed of. So we know she was found on 10/31, but we don't know when she was disposed of. She was mummified.
Right. So it's very likely that she was taken and disposed of over a weekend. It just happens that her body was found on a Tuesday or whatever.
The only other crime in entirety that doesn't fit that was he went to the woman's house to get the furniture. That happened on a Tuesday. I looked.
I'm sure you did. And that was probably just
spontaneous.
He found his opportunity.
I have an itch, I need to scratch it, and here I go.
Yeah, and he's like, it happens to be on a Tuesday. Well, he didn't care it was on a Tuesday.
And I didn't look to be like, is this a holiday? Is he already off? But is he just fired? He's enough to go to work.
Yeah, was he unemployed at that time?
Actually, let's look. Where's the timeline? Let's see.
Because, it's interesting, because he was an x-ray tech, so it's actually interesting that they must have had enough x-ray techs that he didn't work weekends, because I know in smaller hospitals, they trade on-call shifts over weekends and stuff, so.
And maybe May 29th, 1984 was the rape at the house when he went for the furniture.
And then...
And the loss of the relationship was 84, but it doesn't say anything about him being fired from a job around then.
But it was all the same snowballing of issues.
One of the defenses of the police was that Bobby Joe operated under the radar. Like, did he though?
Yeah, did he? I mean, he was cruising the same 4-block stretch, going to the same 2 or 3 clubs.
Like, I do not believe this to be true. Just because your radar is off doesn't mean that he's operating under it. As we look at the timeline, Long moved to Tampa in 1980 and started having employment and legal troubles involving crime in 1981. So he's on the legal system's radar.
And it started with his lack of paying child support.
He's accused of raping his roommate. He's found to be requesting that patients undress unnecessarily as an x-ray tech. He abducts a woman at gunpoint and is given 3 years probation.
I can't believe that only was probation. Like, Jesus Christ, people.
On May 29th, after killing 2 women he rapes a woman in front of her children at her home, and the police connect him to this crime because they find her belongings in his house. He's not under the radar.
No.
He is very much on the radar.
You know who this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
I think this might just be a case of, well, yeah, we know these women are missing, but they're not really worth our time. It's like 4 times. It's like a new record. I thought we just riff in here.
I had a thought that we were looking at a problem of victim bias.
Oh, the turntables have turned, Angel.
A very in-depth and professional Google search led me to the information that there is not clear-cut evidence of police bias. However, there are noted problems within the investigation, including a lack of ununified approach. There were 3 different counties looking at the crimes based on where the victims were found, and they struggled to share information and resources.
Yeah, I was going to kind of bring that up too, especially, now it's a little bit better, but especially back before there was CODIS and all this, centralized databases, even neighboring counties didn't even call each other. Mm-hmm. The sheriffs would be like, hey, okay, I'm just going to stop here.
If we look back at the case of Jody Lee Watts, we learned that CODIS DNA database was started by the FBI in 1990. So there was no way for them to take DNA from the semen found and see if it matched any other unsolved cases. That does not explain, though, the inherent trouble that the different police departments had sharing simple information about victim bios, types of death, and what type of forensic evidence they did find.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it just turned into a giant pissing contest.
Oh, yeah, and I know we see it a lot, and you better not fucking hoard me for this, but we see it a lot, even in, dramatized crime shows today, Criminal Minds, whoever it is, you see agencies fighting for jurisdiction.
Yeah, because they want to get the big bang.
They want the news release and all that. And I'm sure, that went on, that's real, that went on and it still goes on. I think we see it less today, especially because, every police agency...
Well, and social media is so prevalent. Yes. Everybody knows it immediately. Exactly. Before the news even gets it, I already know about it because someone texted me.
Mm-hmm. But that was a big problem, and there's a lot of murder cases and crimes in general that could have been solved quickly had agencies worked together.
So, forensic analysis was in its infancy, and the FBI lab also had troubles with processing the red carpet fibers. So they were trying, but they did not find that they found in the various victims that were transported. The final problem was the skepticism that Lisa encountered when she reported her abduction to the police. And this is all my analysis of everything. This is all me going through and being like, what the fuck, guys?
Yeah. Believe her, and this all ends much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Keep in mind mind that at this point, 7 women had been found sexually assaulted and murdered in the Tampa Bay area over a 6-month period.
Yeah,
That's more than one a month.
yeah, that's a close, that's like boom, boom, boom.
Yet the police did not initially believe that Lisa's story was true, and that they may have a live witness to the man committing these crimes. She was handing them a gift basket.
She's like, here's all the information you need, like literally. And she's like, oh, by the way, my fingerprints are all over his bathroom if you need like a correlation that I was there.
And it's documented that the reasons given is that they believe that she came from a troubled background and she may be lying or exaggerating the events that she experienced. One officer thought she was lying because she was too calm. She has so much trauma.
Yeah, this is like another day for her.
She's just like, oh, well, I mean, this day, like, I didn't get to go home and kill myself today.
That was her plan for the day.
I'm going to take care of this before I go home and kill myself because I don't want him to kill other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and, we know now someone's demeanor following a trauma or a death means nothing. There is no correlation.
No. They could be laughing, they could be disassociating, they could be crying. It's just how they're dealing with it, but they're in shock.
Yeah, and, just because you're not breaking down because you came home and your loved one was found dead in a horrible way does not mean you did it.
Yep.
And the same thing, just because you're completely, need to be sedated doesn't mean you weren't involved.
Well, when you look at like family annihilators who are very over the top and crying and stuff when they report that their wives and children are dead when they're the ones who did it. You can't just take at face value that they're actually in shock.
That's not something that, and police department, they still do that. So-and-so, I got called to the house and he had a flat affect. Well, maybe he's in shock. Maybe he did it.
Or is it cultural? Maybe he has autism.
Yeah. Maybe he's a Finlander and Finlanders don't cry about shit.
Yeah. And maybe what I'm about to say is controversial, but how long is police academy?
I think it's 12 or 16 weeks.
So you can't expect someone who goes to 16 weeks of police academy to have the same analytic abilities as a trained professional.
Oh, exactly. They can tell you a sliver of everything.
No. They have the capacity to be on the scene in the beginning and document what's observed so the people trained to assess that information know what to do with it.
Exactly, and it's like you said, observations versus interpretation.
They can observe. People like me who are trained, we can assess.
And that's, how are we doing our time before I go off on this tangent?
4-7.
Okay, keep it going. I'll disregard.
But basically, the police were very down to like victim bias. And it should be noted that the police did learn from these mistakes, so I'll give them credit for that. And the analysis of Long's case did lead to changes in the way the police and FBI track serial offenses and prioritizing forensic evidence. So when you look at the timeline, does anything stand out that we talked about in relation to the Joylyn Watts story? And this isn't a trick question. It's not like I'm going to tell you what you missed. I'm just asking for you to assess.
Okay. Oh, now I'm looking. So remember when I said October 14th was my wedding anniversary because that was when Karen Din's friend was found. That was also his birthday was October 14th, so I knew I'd mention. Okay.
She's also telling me she's a serial killer.
Okay, Joylyn Watts.
Now think about how the police functioned. On how that killer and this killer were both functioning.
Well, they were both, allowed to work after being convicted of crimes that should have prevented them from working in that field.
Like the hospital maybe should have been like, nuh-uh, sir. you do not get to pass this reference check to, like, move to a second hospital.
Yeah, you don't get to be like, oh, hey gal, you have to be naked to get your shoulder x-rayed.
Like, I know I'm x-raying your ankle, but will you take your top off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of a thing where, you know, men are just allowed to do whatever they want.
So that is my very in-depth story of Bobby Joe Long. Maybe the worst man, he's no longer the worst man in Florida because he's dead. That's Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis, he still holds that title, regardless if you signed his death warrant.
So now you're allowed to give your thoughts.
No, well, first of all, I'm still super impressed that you came up with the Weekend Killer, because I thought that was like what he was called in the
No, he was called
the classified ads. There was only two. I mean, I don't want to say only two, but
and I was going through like, absolutely not. He didn't even kill those women.
yeah, he would be like the classified ads rapist, if anything.
So as I was putting the timeline together, I was curious, like, how does someone hold down a full-time job and still have the time to kidnap, rape, and murder all these
when
women?
it's so close to the previous one.
And my tenacity paid off. So you're welcome, Tampa Police.
Nicole's hyperfixation paid off.
This only reinforces everything I do from here forward.
I know. This is a bad idea. So here's my thoughts. Tampa Police, even though it was the 80s, and I know it's 2020, you know, hindsight's 2020, sharing information. Hey, maybe your sheriff calls the other sheriffs in the neighboring counties and says,
got any bodies like this?
yes, we just found, 3 bodies in a 2-month period. Have you seen anything like this? Especially if where they're found is near a neighboring county.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of a county and the next county is like 60 miles over.
Well, and she wasn't just strangling and dumping. Like, some of this was graphic.
Yeah, this is, there's a signature, he's doing genital mutilation. He's dehumanizing these women because he hates women.
He is up close and personal.
Yeah, and
you don't stab or strangle someone unless you're willing to be right up and doing it.
And I think, his Klinefelter syndrome, I think growing up with that is a big part of this, where he probably was not only teased that he was a girl because of the breast issue, but internally he probably found out that he had XXY chromosome and maybe felt that he was part woman, and not in a identifying as a woman way, but
I gotta hate this part.
But my genes say this is who I am, and I hate that, and I hate every XX female out there.
And I did not have the time to look up if his mother ever said anything after the fact. But if I'm ever just sitting around bored and I feel like hyperfixating again, I might do a little dive.
Yeah, because she was also not awesome.
No. When you don't sleep with your teenage son, because let's be real, we know
that's, if you look at, if you took a survey of every serial killer, even just in like the United States, even if it was just east of the Mississippi, they're all going to have a common thread of one thing. There's like 3 things that is going to connect all of these. Overbearing mother or female relationships is going to be a biggie.
Yes. So I'm just going to look forward so we can tell people what to expect, because I think our calendar is going to be thrown off a little bit. So this is going to be on the 16th.
Yes.
And then you have a story on the 23rd.
I do. But it's going to be much more lighthearted than this one.
You're welcome, people. I only bring the darkness. So,
But we'll have to do a double on the 23rd again, because the following week will be... we're doing another special guest.
Labor Day weekend. You guys get to meet Leah, the person who translates for us when we speak French wrong,
which is all the time.
And so her husband Ben is going to tell us a story about his hometown, and I and Leah are going to tell Ben and Kyla a story about a crime that happened in Houghton.
Oh, I can't wait to just be like Passenger Princess. When Ben's told, like, no one's told us a story.
No one's ever just told both of us a story, so we get to, like, for 30 minutes just listen to Ben, and Ben's a good storyteller.
It's going to be good. Yeah, stay tuned.
So it's going to be exciting, and then we'll just see what happens. I have several stories in the hopper.
I do too. Yeah, I have the one that I'm going to tell after this episode airs is it's lighthearted. It's probably the dumbest thing I'll ever write in my entire life.
I love it.
I wrote it when I was in Florida because I was like, and this is a story I wanted to tell since pretty much the beginning of the pod.
Okay.
But I've been waiting for the time, and I knew I wasn't going to have a full hour of it. So I kind of fluffed the first half about something semi-related, but not really. It's going to be good. You're going to want to listen.
The story I was going to do after Labor Day, I accidentally deleted, so I have to redo it. But I have at least 2 other real depressing ones in the hopper.
Yeah, and I have some that are not murders. You know, I try not to do just all murders. You can do all the murders you want.
I love murders. I tried to do one on non-murders, but I couldn't find enough, like, substance.
Yeah, the one that my next story after this airs is definitely not a murder and definitely not anything you're going to be expecting.
We need to get your mom on here.
Yep.
September.
That's something I'm going to be writing. I've kind of been waiting, we don't want to have guests every week because we're kind of going to...
We just need a break where we can relax.
I don't want to say it's hard to have a guest, but it's a little bit different.
It's a lot of work.
Yep, it's a lot more work, so we kind of want to get back to just the 2 of us for at least a few weeks before we get into guest mode, and then we'll take a few weeks off.
Yep.
And that one that I'm going to write with my mom, or for my mom to tell us, is going to take a little bit because there's so much information that people already know that I don't want it to be rehashing just like the same stuff.
But it's a story I don't know anything about it.
You know the story.
Okay.
You just do not know how it is connected to
Tildale. I can't wait to hear Tildale's rendition of it.
So, and I'll probably end up telling it, and then I'll just, she'll sit next to me and I'll say, tell me about how this went. Yeah, so... We're going to finish our wine. My thumb has stopped throbbing. I don't know if that's because it's healed or just because my blood is thinned enough from the wine.
I'm assuming it's because gangrene has set in.
That could be. I'll be thumbless.
So everyone go to busandbethel.net and look at all of the information I put online because I put so much work into it.
Yeah, she really outdid herself on this one. This is good. So, well done.
We will see you next week.